I've got my congressman, our friend Mark Pocan. He joins us right now. Mark, welcome back to the Devil's Advocates.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is pretty fancy upgrades. I'm not used to this, guys.
Good to see you, Mark. Thanks, man.
Mark, we got a beer fridge and a fridge for the food over here at Civic Media now.
Whoa. Only Van Orden's office has that. I don't know anyone else.
You know, Mark, I hate to start this interview with conversations of another congressional member, but the insurrectionist congressman from the 3rd CD, Derek Van Orden, you were able to view the videotape, let's call it. You saw the video. Mark, what was contained in the video? And why no sound? Why couldn't you hear what he was saying specifically to these high school kids when he was swearing at them?
Well, let me just refresh everyone. I mean, what happened? End of July, before we left for the August break, Derek Van Orden had a bash party. There's pictures of all the booze that he had in his office. And then he took a group of 15 people at midnight for a tour of the Capitol. And when he was there, there were some teenage pages, 6 of them to be exact, some laying on the ground looking at the rotunda like people do at the state capitol, as well as our U.S. Capitol. He proceeded to swear at them and yell at them. The pages wrote down all his swearing. And then he chased him out of the room and decided that the reason he did that was because Civil War soldiers died at the grounds that the U.S. Capitol was built on, because it used to be a hospital. So it didn't quite pass the smell test. And, I wanted to make sure someone from Wisconsin who's embarrassing us because he got bipartisan condemnation in the Senate from both Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer. We knew exactly what happened. I'd asked to have the video released to the public, and the parents apparently contacted Chuck Schumer and were concerned for, if the video is released, MAGA retribution online, what would happen to their kids. And since these are high school kids, I heard more when I got back here. No one asked me not to do it, but I clearly, understood we're not going to re-traumatize kids. It doesn't make sense. But I asked if I could see the video. So I finally got a chance this week on Monday when I came in to see it. Derek, the video had no audio just because it's far away. So I saw 2 different angles of it. But what happened was he was giving a tour to about 15 people. There was another tour, also another member doing a midnight tour. All of a sudden, he seemed to see 3 of the kids in the middle. 3 of them were on the side. 3 in the middle were laying on the ground. So he came up to them, very animated, belligerently waving his arms. And that's when he must have yelled at them. They immediately jumped up. Then he walked over the rope to continue to yell at them. And then as they were leaving, going to their other 3 friends, he followed them to continue yelling at them. But again, I couldn't hear this, but I saw it from 2 different angles. And then after they left, he walked back to his group. And this is where his story falls apart. He does a curtsy bow, put out his hands, and bowed as if he just sang the most beautiful opera you've ever heard. And that, I think, is what shows we knew it didn't seem very honest and genuine what he was saying, that somehow it was about Civil War soldiers. It now appears he had a couple beverages and maybe was a little bit belligerent and was showing off for the 15 people. Somehow picking on teenagers is a show off. I don't quite get it, but that's what we saw. And he's now, instead of double and tripling down on protecting Civil War soldiers' graves, he's now instead saying he's laser focused on making sure there's not a shutdown. He's doing a hell of a job. And because of it, he's not going to respond. But, look, I just think he should apologize to the Senate pages. He should apologize to his constituents, and we can move on. But, right now, him building this lie up just doesn't pass the smell test.
Folks, you're listening to the Devil's Advocates radio show. Our fine guest, Congressman Mark Pocan, my congressman, our friend Mark. I have never in my life bowed about anything when I wasn't hammer drunk. I'm just speculating, Congressman. But do you think the inebriation, this was clearly theatrical? He's putting on a show for what, his drinking buddies that night? My characterization, sir. What do you attribute the bow to, Mark?
I mean, he was proud of what he did. He was showing off. But again, that doesn't match the story he said. And Look, when he started this, and I forgot to mention it, the other group got out of the room very quickly. So he clearly must have been relatively embarrassing enough that they left the room. And, it's embarrassing for us. I mean, the fact that someone from Wisconsin, we're known as Wisconsin nice. And I know Derek's not really from Wisconsin. He's been here for a handful of years. And, he's an actor, author. He was, a Navy SEAL, but since then, I think he had a small role in Active Valor and a few other movies that you've never heard of. And he wrote a book on how to be a man, which I bought for $1.87 on Amazon. Apparently, you light fires and throw punches from the book. But, I think a lot of what he does is acting. One of the other things we know is that every single person who meets with him gets offered beer, no matter what time of the day and who they are. So when children's advocacy groups meet with him at 9:30 in the morning, he offers them beer. And that may be what he thinks we do from Wisconsin, but he's stereotyping, right? I mean, we do like beer. You have a beer refrigerator, but do you offer it to children's advocates at 9:30 in the morning and every single person who visits with you? No. I mean, so this guy is like role playing, but I'd rather he real play the job of a congressperson rather than what he's doing.
Mark, just before we move on from this behavior, the guests of the congressman, when he took his bow, did you see any reaction? What were the people that he was with? How were they acting?
I truly didn't. I watched it once of each direction. And I was surprised more by the bow than by looking at their faces. And they were pretty small faces, to be honest, at that point. But, an opera curtsy kind of whatever he did. I'm used to the bowing as you bow at the waist. If you're going to bow, this is something you bow about. But it was certainly theatrical rather than the way he described it, that he was just in concern of the sacred ground.
Well, it's an embarrassment to the state of Wisconsin, Mark. But the good news is apparently he's laser focused on making sure that we do not have a government shutdown. I am less confident that that's going to happen. I mean, Mark, as far as I know, the math says Republicans could pass whatever they want if they could get their house in order. What's going on in the Congress right now, sir?
Yeah, I mean, nothing. They have officially pulled more appropriation bills off the floor than they've passed, which is not the way it's supposed to work. Our fiscal year ends September 30th. We're supposed to have 12 bills done. We got one of them done. The Senate, by the way, and trust me, as a House member, we hate to say good things about the Senate, passed all their bills in a bipartisan way out of committee from 28-0 to the worst being 24-4, getting 90 plus votes on the floor of the Senate. And we're still trying to figure this out. And even, today, they couldn't even get the votes together to pass the rule to put the defense appropriations bill on the floor. So I don't know what's going to happen. I guess I don't speak whatever language they speak to each other in, but it's certainly not a language of accomplishment because, we have to pass something out of the House to get to conference committee. And it's not the first time by any stretch of the imagination we don't have things done by September 30th, but it is the first time that the complete incompetence of one party can't get their votes together, at least to move these things forward.
Well, Mark Pocan, before you give too much credit to the Senate side, let's not forget obstructionist Ron Johnson from Wisconsin has vowed to block any movement, because the bill should pass one at a time on the Senate floor. No bundling, Mark. No bundling.
I like to refer him now as Marjorie Taylor Greene in drag because, she's obviously the leader of the House, but now that's the behavior he's trying to do. Fortunately, there are more sane people in the Republican Party in the Senate, so he's not exactly getting a lot of support. But, that is the exact behavior we have here, which is dysfunctional. I don't know why he thinks that's good, but, I've never been one to predict Ron Johnson either.
Mark, what about the specific? If he wants to have these up or down votes, obviously, as you mentioned, bipartisan out of committee, lots of votes in the Senate. What is it about these individual versus bundling together from your perspective that would make
this the way it's always done? So I have no idea. I cannot interpret Ron Johnson for you. I'm sorry. You're going to have to get a Georgia dictionary. I don't know what he's thinking. So. I can't really tell you. We do this all the time. We group multiple bills together. Sometimes we have an omnibus, which is everything together. I mean, this is how it's been since he's been in the Senate and I've been in the House. So I just don't know what's new for him.
Mark Pocan, let's talk about the impeachment of Joe Biden. I thought that required a vote. I mean, even on the House side, don't you need at least half the House before you can move forward with an impeachment inquiry? And I know Kevin McCarthy went out and said it, but saying it doesn't make it so. Now they're scheduling impeachment inquiry hearings start next week, I believe, Mark. What's your opinion, sir?
Well, obviously, this is ridiculous. He's doing it because he can't even get the votes again in his caucus for this, because there are some sane people that know there's nothing there, and they think this is a waste of time. But he has to get the insane people to vote for the budget. So he's starting this, and then what he's doing is dangling in front of them, I have to stop investigations if we shut down the government, as if people who only want investigations will then somehow vote with him. Look, I don't get how they think. I don't know what he's trying to accomplish, other than obviously this is highly political. But I think the real goal was to get some of the 40 most extreme people in his caucus to somehow vote for the CR. And if they can't fund an investigation, maybe they'd vote for it. I think that's what he's trying to do, but he's clearly not doing it very well.
Mark, shouldn't there be a vote of some sort before they even hold these hearings? I mean, I realize they have the majority, a slim majority in the House side. They have the right to hold hearings, but do they have the right to call them impeachment hearings without a vote?
They've called all sorts of hearings this. I mean, that doesn't stand out for me as much. I mean, if it were formal processes, maybe, but this is allowing people like Jim Jordan to do what he already does and just call it something that Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks has multiple syllables, so it's big and important. I don't know what else to say.
Mark, I know you served here honorably in the state legislature. You were a legislative leader on the assembly side. The maps. We now have this big quandary, and we have a new Supreme Court, a newly cast 4-3 liberal, quote unquote, Supreme Court. And now your pal from your legislative days in Wisconsin, Robin Voss, is threatening to impeach a Supreme Court justice before she ever voted on a single case. Mark, it's getting kind of ugly back home here. What's your opinion on the impeachment of Protasewicz, or the threats thereof, at least?
3 words: elections have consequences, right? By a 200,000 vote margin, people didn't like the gerrymandered maps and the 1849 abortion law and other things, and decided they wanted to have a different type of justice, and they got what they asked for. And now the Republicans in the assembly are trying to overturn the election. So how ridiculous is it to say you're going to impeach someone who hasn't even heard a case yet, right? Clearly, that doesn't pass any smell test whatsoever. And then it seems they pivoted to, all right, well, then we'll do maps just like in Iowa with a citizens panel. You guys said you wanted it. But what he didn't put was there's about an 800-pound asterisk on that, which is, at least in Iowa, if the legislature can't agree to maps, the courts draw them. They took that all out, and the arbitrators are the gerrymandered majority that's already exists. So it's completely ridiculous, so ridiculous that the Republican, I think, former speaker or legislative leader and Democrat who put that in place said, hey, don't call this the Iowa model, because it's not. I think they're backed into a corner. They just have to accept they lost an election. There are consequences to elections. And, if people think, which you can simply by looking at the math of the legislature, think they're rigged, they're rigged. And hopefully the Supreme Court will do something about that.
Well, Mark, they just get rid of the elections administrators like Megan Wolf last minute, sir. But Megan Wolf, by a vote of the Senate, would be out on her ass. I'm not sure if that's legal. They're going to litigate it. But Mark, quick opinion on that.
Yeah, the legislature clearly is in a place where they are feeling attacked, and they're trying to change the rules of the elections because they're losing elections. And honestly, I think that only makes them lose more elections. So, this is why people have to care about what happens, whether it's an April election or a November election, because your vote really does matter.
Mark, next time you're in the district, come on over. We'll offer you a beer, morning, noon, or night, sir. Thank you so much,
9:30 in the morning. I'll bring kids.
More Devil's Advocates. Stick around. Mark, appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mark.
Take care.